to Let's Get Strategic. Lucky enough today to have Andrew Swindell here, and he has volunteered his time to talk about the line of sight model. So can you please explain what that line of sight model is and an example? That would be great.
Certainly can. Thank you, Nigel. I really appreciate the opportunity. And it's something that, line of sight model off the back of a long history of working in a number of different companies, seeing what works and what doesn't work. But essentially the line of sight model is designed for architects and executives to really better understand their environment, asking the right questions, knowing where to engage and who to engage within their organisation. So the model is quite powerful for identifying opportunities for value and being able to sort of articulate that and taking the business forward a great way at night. So I guess the background of the model is it's generated off the back of the TOGAF framework and the Zachman's methodology, ontology if you like. So those two are the prime inputs, but it's also based on a very personal experience around the rowing 8. If you can imagine 8 executives in your boat and taking your organisation on a journey.
That would be difficult.
Yeah, and it's not always easy because everyone has a different frame of reference. But having those 8 executives in your boat, whether that's a project boat, whether that's a divisional or business unit, whether that's most senior executives of the group, even a board situation, having those executives in that boat that are rowing in the same direction, that have the strength, they're in the right seats for their skills and experience, and they can actually articulate your training plan and the options and the objectives that you're looking to generate. Then you start to get to optimize your boat and your company environment. So so using that model, it's I guess my own personal experience in that space was very much around not having all the right people in the right seats. And so we, didn't win races. So, if you can get those executives to be able to articulate and have those conversations with them, then you're more likely to have a more optimal outcome for your company.
And get the 8 working as a team.
Absolutely, and it's in the right direction, at the right speed, with the right inputs as well. So
yeah, that's brilliant. So can you tell us a bit more about that, the model? Yeah.
Thanks, Nigel. And so, literally the model is 4 key layers. And in terms of those layers, they all need to work together, similar to the rowing 8, to ensure that the company operates, is optimal and is spending money in the right places. So I'll quickly go through each of the layers. And so the strategy layer is very much around the business and the technology strategy. And the number of questions you want to ask about that strategy is it visible? Is it published? Is it readily available? There's other questions around whether it's, does it form part of your ways of working? Do you actively look at that strategy on a regular basis to check in? Does it inform your decisions? Do you use it as a North Star in terms of representing the direction you're taking, the business intent? So that strategy layer has a whole range of inputs into it. So obviously the mission and the vision, the objectives, the strategies, some metrics around it as well. And we often, in architecture land, use the business capability model to highlight. It basically allows the bridging of the business and the technology teams to come together around a single model of the business and a representation of the strategy. So that capability model allows you to do what they call RAG ratings, the red, amber, greens, as to the level of technology capability available. So that's a strategy layer, but also another part of the line of sight model is what we call the architecture framework. And so really it's a great, the architecture is very much an example of your DNA, of the organisation. And so if you've got reference models around business capabilities, around the business model in terms of value chains and functions, if you've got an enterprise information model for your data, if you've got some clarity around the application model at a conceptual level as well, you can see how these models start to really frame up some of the scoping and the opportunities to really improve your different portfolios. So within that architecture framework, we also talk about 3 levels. So there's a conceptual layer, a logical layer, and a physical layer. And so having representations at those different layers really does give you a little bit more detail, and it allows you then to develop projects and planning and build up your portfolio of projects. So you can imagine that the architecture framework reflects where your strategy has been to date. The business change portfolio of projects, and this is where the business and the technology teams come together to deliver either agile-based projects or waterfall-based projects. And so they're literally the organisation's response to improving capability and delivering on your business strategy. So it's really important to have the relevant models, the architecture models at the level of detail required for your programs and projects. And obviously executives don't want to see the fully detailed wiring diagrams that might need to exist at a project level. So you really need to get that leveling right between the different representations and the executives and the stakeholders you're engaging with.
So like the executives have that higher view, and then the architects and the technical people have the lower
view. Yeah. So where you can actually physically build something to really impact on a capability. So again, you can see how those three layers are starting to build on each other. And then there's the fourth layer, which is the go-to-market layer, and that's really all about getting some of the key functions that face the customer in alignment. So your marketing teams, your sales teams, your service delivery teams, your operational teams, getting some clarity around all of the messages that are being created for your customers and your external stakeholders. So you can see that all the capabilities you're building in project land off the back of the architecture framework and the strategy, they all enable you go to market. And so there's a real line of sight, what we call a line of sight, follow the marble from your strategy all the way through to how you go to market. So the model has a number of questions you can ask that to get a better understanding of your environment, how you're going to market, are your customers receptive, you investing in the right projects. There's just such a wealth of opportunity to have conversations right across the business and with your fellow architects. So that's the line of sight model.
And have you got an example of how you've implemented that model?
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked at so many different companies, and using that line of sight model, it's something that you can use that to have the conversations about, is a strategy in place. And so we've got this representation here that talks to where there were certain elements of the line of sight model that were in place, but you could see there were a number of gaps where it wasn't. And so that was a real insight, is that the elements of the architecture framework that are part of your DNA, even if you haven't got those reference models in place, you don't have that visibility across the organisation. It's, you can imagine, similar to those executives in the rowing eight, is that their responses are not necessarily going to be aligned or as optimal as you would like. So using that model, using the different reference points, enterprise information model, understanding your value chains and processes, understanding your application portfolio, using that capability model in anger. There's a range, and obviously then matching your portfolio of projects to that, and then constantly working that model to ensure that the direction you're taking, the speed you're operating at, the agreements amongst the executives in the rowing boat are all in alignment.
All right, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I think it's a really great value in being able to use this model with your executives, as architects, or even the executives want to use that to understand their own environment. So you're asking questions around the business, the data, the applications, the project responses, the funding, and also gives you a bit of a stakeholder.
So I guess if it's got the parts to it, the strategy part, the architecture, the project, any of those teams could use the model in consultation.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you're literally all singing off that same song sheet, then the boat will go faster. The alignment will be the agreements, the articulation of the strategy, the intent, and the response will be a lot clearer. And so you'll notice that in stakeholder meetings. You get to stay. You don't have to go back to the 101. Everybody knows what our most important data is. Everyone knows we use this system for our document management or our CRM finance responses. or we're already focusing on these key capabilities because we already had the workshops, the conversations, the runway is clear now to sort of move forward collectively.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. Well, thanks, Andrew, for coming along and talking about that. Obviously, it has an applicability to any industry. So if you want any more details, please seek out Andrew on LinkedIn and take it from there. So that's all we've got time for today.